Hello, everyone. My name is Gaëlle Morel, and I'm the exhibitions curator at the Ryerson Image Center. On behalf of the RIC, I would like to thank you for joining us tonight for a Tanenbaum lecture with the acclaimed American photographer, Eli Reed. I would like to start by acknowledging with respect the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee peoples and their traditional territory of the dish with one spoon. The Ryerson Image Center stands within this territory today, and we respectfully accept our collective responsibility to the land during a time of environmental upheaval and crisis. While the Tanenbaum Lecture Series has had several names from 1986 to 2013, it was sponsored by Kodak Canada and known as the Kodak Lecture Series. Through the years, over 230 photographers, filmmakers, media artists, photo historians, and curators addressed Toronto audiences on the Ryerson campus, including Eugene Smith, Bernice Abbott, Dawood Bey, Stan Brakhage, Robert Frank, Sally Mann, Michael Snow, and John Sarkovsky, among many others. The continuation of this acclaimed series was made possible by a generous gift from Howard and Carole Tanenbaum in 2014. I would like to take this opportunity tonight to offer a great thanks to the Tanenbaums for their ongoing support and generous support for this lecture series and other programs at the Ryerson Image Center. I'd like to mention a few program notes before we begin. We are recording tonight's event and we'll be uploading it onto our YouTube channel in the near future for those who aren't able to attend tonight or for those who would like to watch again. After the lecture tonight, we will commence a Q&A. If you have questions throughout the lecture, please use the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen to submit them. Other listeners can use the upvote feature to vote for popular questions in case we do not have time to address them all. In the case of a technical difficulty, please remain patient while we correct the issue. And lastly, please note that the presentation we are about to see includes depiction of violence and nudity. Eli Reed is an award-winning documentary photographer with the Magnum Photo Agency since 1983. Reed has worked for newspapers, magazines, foundations, television, major motion pictures, and documentaries. His publications include Beirut, City of Regrets, Black in America, and the career retrospective Eli Reed, A Long Walk Home. He is the recipient of numerous awards, including the POYI World Understanding Award, the Lucy Award for Achievement in Documentary Photography, the World Press Photo Award, the Leica Medal of Excellence, the Overseas Press Club Award, and the Neiman Fellowship at Harvard. He currently works as clinical professor of photojournalism at the University of Texas in Austin. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce Eli Reed.
You can't take anything that's not offered to you. In some ways, it's probably best to say you collect pictures, you collect moments. And it's like people sometimes look for the big, broad moments, big brushstrokes. But the brushstrokes are not always large. A lot of times they're small, detailed. It means you get closer and you learn how to be quiet and listen to people and pay attention to people. When you're listening to their story, that you're accepting what they're saying, that you're not judging them, that you're all ears, sort of, all eyes, trying to understand what it means to be a human being. Good evening. This is a really nice honor to be here, to be able to share things about my work. What I'm going to say is I'm going to go back from the beginning, sort of. I was the firstborn. I was always the good kid, always reading, drawing things on whatever paper was available for me. And I was quiet and never getting in trouble, right? Um, in my early days. Born in 1946 at home in Linden, New Jersey. I I really, I really remembered that mostly from uh, a light that was in the looking at a light for the first time in a light fitting, and just being curious about that. Maybe that was my first voyage into really uh, a, career working with light and form and things like that. Um, my my family of my father and mother, Ellis and Sally Mae Reed, along with my two younger brothers, Clarence and Lamont, we moved to Perth Amboy, New Jersey, after a fire destroyed our family home when I was 4 years old. Um, I was born on Lincoln Street in Linden, New Jersey, which is interesting to me. I made my first photograph at the age of 10 of my mother standing in front of our Christmas tree in Perth Amboy. 2 years later, she passed away from cancer, and the photographs became a means connecting the present and a vessel to hold onto memories at life, love, and loss. I grew up playing stickball, basketball, baseball, and and I played with local kids. Most of the kids I played with were tagged as troublemakers, um, and but I never had a problem because all the tough guys were my friends because I respected them, who they were, and the other part of them, and each one of them had a more quiet uh, side, and than the they didn't get looked at that way by other people, but they always had a sensitive side that was not allowed to be shown. Um, so stickball, in some ways, playing stickball with these guys were part of my expanded connective cord. The industrial brick buildings of the Delaney Homes housing project were built in 1950s and were recently demolished at some point in the last 10 years. Um, a lot of the families I had friends such as Bruce Taylor and Brian Taylor. Both of them were rookies of the year in respectively football and in basketball. And there was other friends who, Byron Razor and his sister Diane, who became doctors later. So Delaney Homes was the toughest part of Perth Amboy, but it was not like maybe as bad as some other places like that, around the country, whatever. But it was pretty decent. I had earlier shown signs of talent and became interested in art after entering high school. Looking at paintings of historical events were probably one of the things that seduced me into my initial interest about the world outside of where I lived. Um, and my time at Perth Amboy High School was actually pretty good because I wasn't looked down on because I was black. Perth Amboy is a genuinely nice place to live in. I was really fortunate. The teachers were very supportive, and my high school world history teacher, Charlie Bodo, and his family also lived in the Delaney Homes. And Delaney Homes was supposed to be the toughest part of Perth Amboy. Um, it was a part of my reason in my Charlie Bodo's teaching was part of my wanting to know more about the world history. Okay, so as a sophomore, I was called into the principal's office, and where I was introduced to an internationally known New York art critic who had somehow stumbled into Perth Amboy, and he was looking at some of the paintings that were done and at the this annual exhibit in front of the school. And so I was called down to the principal's office wondering what kind of trouble was I in. But I'm going to repeat something that was said in my retrospective. As Paul Thoreau wrote in Eli Reed, A Long Walk Home, Eli had done a view from inside the kitchen of his apartment in Delaney Homes. The angle fascinated the critic, and the kitchen in the foreground was the least of it. The view showed the kitchen door open to the outside, leading the eye out and beyond to the open air. And the hopeful, or at least more promising background. It was the first time anyone had ever said anything to me about my paintings in that way. Um, you should consider a career in art, the critic had said, to be in the presence of my smiling and proud principal, and along with other adults in the office. I needed that kind of support at the time to propel myself to whatever I was going to go into. A few things happened that were positive beginnings for after graduating from high school. I enrolled in a night school classes for art at New York School of Fine Industrial Arts. I started judo classes at the local YMCA and supported myself working full time at a hospital as a nursing orderly in the Performing General Hospital, and later at St. Vincent's St. Vincent's Hospital in Manhattan, Greenwich Village. Um, the journey was is a long one. I was still, I came from a family was poor, didn't have money, but I really had a fiery feeling that I wanted to go beyond where I was at, and not because necessarily I was poor, but because the world I was seeing all kinds of things I wanted to know about. I wanted to see with my own eyes, and which later led me to a lot of places that were uh, sort of seriously dangerous, also, but also people who were going through it. I felt a kinship because you grow up poor, you don't have the things that other people have, and the way that people I was seeing, they didn't have things because, the normal things you need, food, water, maybe a place to sleep without fear of a building collapsing or being shot because of some different groups that are at war with each other. Um, and yet the thing that was interesting, as an adult, I found that the first Afro American to vote in a national election lived in per family. Um, and I also discovered that per family had a long sense of history of dealing with resistance, dating back to the first time it's one that stopped on the Underground Railroad, which I hadn't known before. It was a secret network of routes and safe houses used by enslaved African Americans to escape in the free states and Canada during the 19th century. The Ku Klux Klan tried to incorporate themselves in per family because per family was a very successful place with all kinds of industrial things. They were how would you say, greeted by they were kicked out literally, and they made another attempt. The Ku Klux Klan made another attempt, and they were greeted by 6,000 per family residents who drove them out, apparently with everything but the kitchen sink. Um, I always saw per family as a decent place and supportive to what was going on in other parts of, and supportive in ways that were not evident in other parts of the country, particularly in the deep South. It was a good place to grow up. I began studying photography through sheer happenstance. While taking a course in illustration, you're required to put together a swipe file, which was something that you could refer to if you're an illustrator. It's something you could, if you want to draw hands or a tree or a building or truck or something like that, you'd have pictures. The pictures you're looking at now were from my time spent in Lebanon. Um, I studied what I started to wonder about being able to witness close up imagery with my own eyes because of looking at photo magazines. And I really got into that. It was no longer a swipe file. It's my way of looking deeply into the world by, national magazines, photography magazines. There's a magazine called Stern, and that was just one of the, anything I could get my hands on, I got hold of. And all through my career, I've tried to look beyond just the surface of things. I've tried to look into the core of what was going on and how it impacted on people. When I graduated from art school in 1969, I did a 5-month stint at a New York advertising agency, and it was obviously not a place I should be, but that was my first job, and I carried a camera with me all the time, photographing the world at large. Um, and the first, I also got a job as a rock magazine called Zygote Magazine, and the first assignment they gave me was um, it was to go to the Apollo Theater in Harlem, and the assignment was to photograph a concert for the Young Lords, a Latin civil rights group dedicated to the empowerment of Puerto Rican and Latinx communities. Um, it's funny. I lived in New Jersey still, in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. I didn't really even know what Apollo Theater was, but I found it, and it was the concert was interesting. That there's a group, a very popular group, the Young Rascals, played the first performance, and also I was really fascinated by the MC, master of ceremonies, because she was an African American woman with this gigantic afro, and she held the microphone like with a death grip, and obviously she wasn't used to being in that position. And she said at one point, people backstage are telling me I should tell some jokes, and she said, "Well, I don't know any jokes," and I thought that was pretty good, straightforward talking about that. Um, and it's I got involved even with Magnum by accident in a way. I was asked to go to the New York uh, International Center of Photography because one of the people wanted to see some of the work I did in Central America, and it's been a lifelong thing of things happening where I wasn't expecting things to happen. I had influences like the Kamungi Workshop, was a group of Black photographers who came about because they um, they weren't allowed to be in a lot of places where Black photographers weren't really shown in galleries, not many, um, and they had great difficulties getting commissions from mainstream publications or ad agencies, and the members were determined to make work about Black life unfettered by what you call the white gaze. And it was a very interesting place because the first director of the Kamangi Workshop was Roy DeCarbra, who was he's on the same level as Gordon Parks, who was also one of the people I looked up to. There's a lot of people to look up to. They're doing really good work, and that were how you say dedicated to reality and not playing games. I ran into Donald Greenhouse, who became a mentor. He's a photographer, a New York photographer. He was his studios at 1234 Broadway. That's why I met him. He was in the process of getting a place in Soho, a large studio where he lived and worked, and that became part of my life, important part of my life, all the way to the point where I was, approached to join Magnum. Um, I always looked up to the Magnum photographers the same way I looked up to Kamungi photographers because they were dedicated to doing something that would make sense, that would be substantial and explain things to the world at large. That's what I wanted. This pictures you're looking at now, we're in Mozambique. I was working for UNICEF project on nutrition, and that was the first trip, and the second one was about child marriage because there wasn't. Well, I won't go into that, but it was needed, and so I volunteered because I knew a couple of female friends in the United States who'd gone through things, not the same things, child marriage, but went through rough things. So I really wanted to do something responsible. Um, and this is the thing, it's you can always think about how you'll catch something on the way back, but there's no catching something on the way back. If you see something going on, you're sort of obligated to try the best you can to actually address that with your work and hopefully make a difference in things. That's the attitude I have about that. The people you meet. I mean, however bad it could be, there's always somebody that's a lot worse situation. Um, when I was growing up, I guess I didn't think about oh, we're poor and it's bad, it sucks, whatever. Because it was this was life. My parents loved us, me and my brothers, my father. and did the best. She was also involved in the church in a big way. I didn't realize how big until when she passed away at a funeral. There was like this a party that they had celebrating her life, which I was not really. I was 12 years old, and I was really irritated, but I didn't realize exactly how much she was appreciated. And I found out, and you learn things. You don't learn everything, immediately. But that was one of the things that I learned. I've always done curious about a lot of things, reading everything I get my hands on, even books I didn't understand. Like, for example, I heard about this great book called Law and Order, and this is when I was actually, I think it was about 10 years old, and I went to the library, and the librarian didn't quite understand, and she sent me to the collection of books, legal books, uh, because that's what's this kid doing here, 10 years old, looking for read Law and Order. But there's been that thing where you have to reach out for yourself. This picture is taken when I was shooting a movie. I was doing a documentary, at least the beginning of a documentary, and I also always had a camera on my shoulder. And I made this photograph there. Moving forward into more recent times, this was in Cambodia. Invited to come speak at a lecture and an exhibition that was there. It was really I guess the thing too, I always wanted to see things, not just see things about other cultures, how I fit in, how I connect, and that's one thing that being a photographer has helped do. I started work as a painter. It was like uh, I was a pictorial illustration in school and design. Didn't realize how much I was going to help as far as photography, but I exchanged basically paintbrush and paint for a camera and an SD card now. I also spent a lot of time in China over the last few years, since 2014, I believe it was when I first, the second time. I actually worked on a book project, Day in the Life of China. But being able to just be on the streets, and photographing people and being invited to people's homes, I get more of a kick out of that than because you're learning something close up. You're not distant. You're not like way on the other side of the planet, and you're finding out that everybody has the same problems and the same things that to go through. This picture happens to be a picture from of at the oldest military fort in China. I ended up going there because I was invited by a photographer, Mr. Song, who's a wonderful photographer, wonderful individual. He has this workshop, and the students are not kids, they're adults who are really serious about photography. And he's teaching them to be serious, to be not just the appearance of something, but going beyond that. So we got along really well, even though he doesn't speak English and I don't speak Chinese. We still got along really well. This picture's in Mongolia. There was this photographic festival by somebody who's a really strong belief in the Buddhist religion, and he thought photography, having a festival where people can share work, would be really nice. I attended that 3 times. I was invited 3 or 4 times, I guess it was. This picture, I think, was the last picture I made in China because I haven't been able to get back since then. With the illness, but then moving on to most of the work I've done that people are familiar with is black and white, but I still love black and white, and I've been shooting mostly color. It's maybe the connection with being a painter in a certain way. But black and white you can see in color also, like this picture. It's the cover of my Black America book. And this picture, the way things start, I was on assignment for New York Magazine a day before, and it's on a very sort of rough area. And I ran into this woman on the street, a young woman, and it just hit me. I wanted to photograph her, and I asked if I could come back the next day with a medium format camera to make a photograph of her and her son, and that was the resultant picture. I've also worked a lot with homeless people and the problems that you run into. And now there's a lot more people going through homelessness because of the pandemic in the United States and all over the world. And people who never imagined this kind of thing happening to them. And some places have done better jobs of taking care of treating people or getting people, doing the best you can. In other places, obviously, the United States was not a good place. This is from the Million Men March. I was going to that because I realized it was an important moment. Choosing moments in history that are important to you is also an important thing. And it was right, and it was extraordinary experience with those men getting together to try to make some things better. But things don't happen just like boom. Let's tell you, it's all changed. This is a million youth march, which I also photographed. It's history doesn't happen in a blink. It happens over a slow drive, so to speak. And so I think one of the things when I'm working on subjects, I don't expect things to just fall out right now. You just have to be aware and do as much as you can. Walk slow, walk fast, but walk. That's important. And this is another photograph from the second Million Man Youth March. This is Reverend Sharpton with somebody from the mayor's office discussing some things. He was not very happy. You can see from the expression on his face, because the person from the mayor's office was accused him of something, and he was actually doing the opposite. He was actually helping out quietly, not for the newspapers, but because it's the right thing during the riots that were going on. This is another photograph done for National Council of Churches. I did a lot of work covering the situation between Black and white people in New York. When I was doing my Black America book, at one point I was worried, do I have too many pictures from that? And I don't know if some of the other things I wanted to do, and this is like one of the other things I wanted to do, just life as it is. And it's life as it is not just necessarily the racist things that were going on, but the racism comes out in different ways. Like this should not have been happening. And this is another photograph of that was happening right around the corner from where I was living at the time, Columbia University, where students took over parts of the school. So it just happened. Jesse Jackson happened to be there. I walked. I spent a week with Miss Parks, Rosa Parks, and with high school students on a tour of the Civil Rights Trail in the South, and that was really. I always wonder how the kids would take it, and that little kid said it all to me. I also did some things on violence in schools. Schools in a very difficult place, and a lot of things happened, and 3 people got killed in this one day. But still, a few months later, they had this thing for boys and the girls with the best grades. And life goes on so consistently, and no matter where you go, the kids that are out there being kids will do that. This lady was really cool, 104 years old. She kept on pinching her younger son's bottom, and he said, "Mama, you shouldn't do that." And she said, "Tell him don't mean anything." I love that. I love that in her. This is a photograph, also looking for just sheer beauty of some simple scenes. This is where my young brother used to live in Augusta, Georgia. And, you don't need fancy equipment every time, but, equipment that does what you want it to do. This is like my hometown. And when I started learning really how to paint and to take photographs, I started at the seaport, not the seaport, but riverport, I guess I should call it. And it's just refreshing. This is in India. I've always wanted to go to India, so I ended up going for 4 days with somebody I've been mentoring. For a while. She was getting married and asked me, to invite me to the wedding. Said, if you can supply a place for me to sleep, and cheap flight or something, I'll come and I'll do pictures for your. That'll be my gift for your wedding. And so that was what I did, and that's what she did. And she was happily married and still happily married. Their husband they have a cute child. Speaking of cute, just walking the streets of New York, I love moments like this, quiet moments, and you don't know what people are thinking, but they're in love, and that's good enough. That's always a good thing. Um, yeah, this is the 2004 Republican convention. Usually, I hate conventions. I just hate being there, and it's I don't know why, but this was it was interesting. It was good. It was interesting. Um, and this was also part of the convention outside, who were rebuffing the Republicans outside. But the thing is, it's like to the way the United States is now. There's so much 50% one way, 50% another way, perhaps, or maybe a little bit more. But people are still people. You know, they're you can't start as soon as you start labeling people, you just label yourself in a way, and it doesn't really advance the cause for doing the right thing. Um, so I actually, and I was getting ready to go to come to Texas to teach. That was like, 2005. That was 2004. This is at the Washington Monument, the inauguration for President Obama, and that was pretty interesting. The whole thing was interesting, including this. I felt like the same way that women felt like, okay, now it's going to start, because you knew that was not going to be easy, and the Congress proved that by trying to re, rebuff everything he came up with. This is at I think it was a studio. It was a studio I had with two other students when I was in Austin. This one is the second studio, and she was modeling for a friend who's a photographer, and asked if he could use it for a workshop. This is my friend. She's sitting down there with the big belly. It's her first child, her only child, and this is a group of women organization she started to band together, to do good things. So I was running between that and a wedding. Somebody else is getting married. This is Los Angeles. I spent a lot of time there with some friends. It's like sort of have a Los Angeles family in some ways, and it's an amazing city all the time. So extraordinary. That was sort of workshop I taught, and I decided to go out with the students, and you shoot, you watch them shoot, they watch you shoot, and different ways of approaching, different ways of seeing, and it was fun. Fun's always a good thing. That's something to remember also. This is a lady called the Black Widow. She's was one of the top women pool players, and she had a really problem with her back. It's just amazing that she could even play. Wonderful lady. She's supposed to be very tough and mean, but these little kids in her neighborhood loved her. And I said, no, she is not tough and she's not mean. This is a photograph taken in France. I'm always have a camera or two with me, and maybe three cameras, even though you may not see them because they're small cameras, and just looking for pictures constantly, looking for the world. This is part of a project I did for military families, uh, doing portraits that could be sent to their husbands or their other in the where they're stationed at for a Christmas present. The picture of the family. This is New York. I just only Superman in his old age can walk the streets in New York, I guess, or something like that. I just like the picture because it's so typical. I mean, it's everywhere. There's always interesting pictures that are funny, that are very human. This is something I did at the University of Texas. It's a part of a project on documenting Mexican Americans in their life, and that started by Professor Maggie Rodriguez 20 years ago. It's finally considered a center now. This is a photograph I made just doing some things that were going on at the university, which I happen to like anyway. So that's a good enough reason for making a picture visible, I guess. Um, yeah, it's like this picture's from the same thing. Uh, Started doing portraits of the people that were being interviewed. And this is a musician, and what happened is that the strobe did seem weren't charged up, which is fine. I like working that way. Another street scene in Los Angeles. It's always like good practice to challenge yourself. I think that's what I've tried to do. Even things that I was not in the mood for, you'll never be in the mood if you just take that. This is in New Orleans. This is musicians coming back from after the horrible Katrina thing happened. They're coming back, getting together to perform and eat and commiserate each other. It's a photograph from, where is this? This is in northern New York, a place that was very, very cold, put it that way. And this wasn't cold that day, but that woman's sort of tough. Some West Dallas, when I was doing a story on racism in using places that are not very healthy. It's a former student who is really gathered, meaning she's like really smart about how she does her business and makes photographs and all kinds of good things. And she's also a singer and actress. My God, what else can you do, with grief? So anyway, that's a picture. It's a recent picture taken on the day of well, not the day of the inauguration, but I think this was made after that. This is at the state capitol building, really. So I just happened, to be bouncing around there. This is a friend I was having lunch with at some, I don't remember the restaurant, but it was a barbecue place. That was really good. And I'm always looking pictures, always pushing the envelope, pushing the lens, pushing the mind, I call it. This is part of an assignment for Vogue magazine. And it really didn't know what they were looking for because it sounded like a photo essay and also a fashion shoot. So I saw this, and this is one of the first things I shot, just because, you're making it up as you go along and with a very limited time. Because this would be one of the pictures that would be, I guess you call it, like the journalism, the photo essay kind of thing. And that's a picture I happen to like. And he didn't really have any idea what they were expecting, because it could have been like a fashion shoot. This is kind of picture I liked. At one point I shot fashion for the Detroit News when I worked there. It was fun. And, just what is fashion? It's like fantasy for a short time, and that's not my original thing. This is on the state capitol building, Capitol grounds again. This was, I think, before the inauguration day. Yeah, it was before the inauguration day. But just a couple, just laying back, backing up. And here, this is the same woman I photographed before. She's had a really rough life, and her religion has gotten her through it. And I thought that was, even though I have some disagreements about how she goes about it, but it worked out. And Vogue ran that picture. This is, I think this guy. Really, really wonderful person, and nice to work with in the movie. Stay. Maybe we should show this picture. We could hold on to this picture and show the film part. I'm almost forgetting about that because I'm having such a time talking to you guys. So, Brian.
You do it for the music, totally. You're not doing it to become a millionaire or anything like that. You're doing it to keep the music alive. The gift for me in my life has been able to be a top studio musician. There's nothing like being in the Hollywood studios and playing with the best players in the world. What is nice is times where you can talk about what I call shop talk. Talk about your instrument with somebody else. Say, for example, I'm talking about a guitar. to a trombone player, and we're trying to relate how we can think of the two instruments.
There's a still here somewhere.
Right.
You better hurry up.
For me as an actor, I think there are certain actors that have the ability to transcend their own personality, right, and take you to the moment that they're living in. And it's the same thing with music.
Been an amazing experience meeting you, and you basically introduced me to that whole world of Lainey Kazan and show business.
That's a little too easy. Let's go with something a little more difficult.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let's.
Because I'm not catching that.
Try and do your best.
But give it a feel.
That's. I'm going to be doing a lot of this.
That's all I do is I try and do my best. I try and knock my own socks off. My fan club still here, Jeff?
2016, trying to keep the music alive. Woo! Yeah.
Okay, that was, we can continue showing pictures again, I think. That was from a project I've been working on, a documentary, and it's really sort of I've worked on a number of movies, and I love movies. I love movies that are interesting. So I'm working on a couple of things working right now. I got stopped at one point because I got ill, but you keep on working. And this movie Stay only happened because I worked on it because Ryan and the director both were fans of my work, which I didn't know that, of course. And Ryan said I was in the union, so they called me, and that's how I ended up working there. And it was an interesting movie. So my friend Leon, I met him when the first movie I worked on, 5 Heartbeats, and we became friends. We ran into each other a few years later, and he's one of my best friends. And we get together when we can. We keep on running to each other in various places. I worked with John Singleton for a movie, Poetic Justice, and I ended up becoming like his mentor, which again, then I found out from other people until John told me, yeah, you're my mentor. And he went back to school when he saw what to do with photographs and how a visual thing that he wasn't involved before in certain ways. And this is A Beautiful Mind, also the first movie I worked on with Ron Howard. He was an amazing guy. And Russell's an amazing guy. It's a whole nother story. Anyway, yeah. So that was an interesting movie. I mean, the whole thing, and the actual person it was based on showed up on the set the first day, just passing through at Princeton. This is like for Cinderella Man. I was asked to do what they call a special, and I was supposed to do lights and everything else in another place, but I saw this natural light coming through the ceiling, through the ceiling, and ended up doing that. 8 Mile is another interesting one. Eminem is one of the hardest working people I've ever met. I mean, I really liked him for that reason. He's very serious, and he's gone through a lot of stuff, obviously, too. But that picture was taken while he's writing the song that won the Academy Award. Kansas City, working with Robert Altman was an amazing experience, because he's like brilliant, and it was fun. It's always fun if you're doing things you like. And one movie, John Singleton movie, Rosewood, I decided to do portraits of the individual characters for myself. Actually, this is John Boyd. He had a very complex character in the movie, and but I did it with a large format camera. And the Jackal, that was another fun one because we were just traveling all over the place. And, one place you're there, and then you blow up a place, and then you go to the next place. And no, it wasn't a blowing up. That was the fun thing. It was great working with those people that were in the movie. And this is one of my favorite actors because he's always, I'm not going to repeat the things he has said, but he's just, he works hard, and he knows how fortunate he is to have this work, the work that he does. This is another good one, working with amazing people, and we worked mostly in this, it seemed like we spent most of the time in a small house, and it was cold. And this picture was from 15 Seconds. Oh, that's Ian McGregor, again from Stay. I was experimenting with this lighting places, windows set on the sets. And so I photographed the director and the stars and director of photography. This was 1980. I was working for Detroit News, not Detroit News, San Francisco Examiner. It was 80 or 81, the San Francisco Film Festival. It was her first movie, Private Benjamin, that she produced. And she's usually always smiling, but she was serious there. This was a kick. It was, when words fail right now, but that was, he's such an amazing individual. All three of them are really, but him, what he went through, and how the way he came out. I'm gonna make you guess for this one, but she's a star in Gone with the Wind. And that was a fun time because what they asked me to do and what I came up with were totally different. They got what they asked for, but I like this picture a lot better. These are two kids who are friends, the kids of a really wonderful actor. He's not just an actor, he's written, I think 5 books of poetry or something like that, and album covers and all kinds of things. This is somebody that's also doing some stuff with, but I think maybe let's show this other fictional film. Brian, can you pull that up a little bit before we go on Oprah?
I don't have much time.
I'll fill up the rooms with my darkest thoughts, lock them in, ignore their calls. Hold me close and make me.
Are you okay?
Be honest, gentle, kind, but never look me in the eye. I'm scared what you might find. Give me truth or give me lies. I can't see the difference with these eyes. I'll shut them up, I'll close them tight. Lock out the darkness with the
You know me. You wouldn't lie.
Who?
Can you hear
Why?
the voice
When? I don't know. Have a good day.
You know me.
How am I to resist if what they say is true? despise. I'll take comfort in the silence and be
As I've told you before,
welcomed by a swift sunrise.
I don't have much time.
Hear a thousand mournful cries and lose me from these mortal ties. Let music play, let the bells toll, a song to shake a dumbstruck soul.
That's another one that's taken some time to do because I got sick again. You know, I don't know, maybe it's from overwork. I don't know, but I have. It's actually in this particular point, it's actually getting more interesting because I have more places to go to. You know, and that worked out okay. This is with Natasha. I did another special in Toronto again. Movie did pretty well with critics. 100% what do you call it? Rotten Tomatoes. You know? And that's the actress who played the part. Like the producer asked, "How your students photograph her?" I said, "Well, why don't you come over and we'll see." They did. They flew to Austin, and each of the students got 2 hours alone photographing her. And the last night was gave her lessons on lighting, stuff like that. This is another project for the movie. For American Gangster, the director asked me to photograph Harlem the way it used to be, you know, and Harlem's that feeling was always there. So for about 5 days, I wandered around about an hour and a half each day. That's the very first photograph I made. And the head dressings they had used to be like stockings, but now you could go into a drugstore and get them, you know. I was really lucky in the first day. Then I think a lot of you're doing is that. This is a woman, this actress, director, she's writer, producing the small things that were on shows on the internet, but she had a really tough time. Her husband died in bed next to her with their child between them, you know, so it makes it feel interesting. This is one of the pictures again from the director asked me to, you know, walk around Harlem or take pictures. He didn't ask me to walk, just do photographs. So I walked around. I took the subway up there in Harlem and just walked around. This is Frank Everts. He is the subject of a document I've been working for 3 years with my fellow professor, Tracy Dalby. And it's really good. Particularly, I think it's needed for this particular time. So I'm hoping that we'll get backing to finish it. This is the day when we showed the film to the subject. It's a documentary for the first time, and in a theater. So like, this thing was, of course, brought into that, So this is in Seoul, Korea. First time I was there. I was there for a month to photograph entertainment industry for a book that was coming out, that was being made. And that was like Christmas Eve, in 2007. This is a crew that were in the middle of nowhere, a long way away, let's put it that way, for a movie shot. I mean, it's like 800 kilograms kilos from Seoul. This was our more recent trip where for a Korean television station that wanted to do outsider's view of Korea. And so ended up being here for 2 weeks. It was supposed to be 1 week, but the crew liked what I was doing. And after we fought the first week, I didn't know there was gonna be somebody following me. This is a good friend from Korea. Yeah, and it's good thing I love Korean food. I'm real into that. This is also in a show, a concert that's like, it's done with special effects. It's not real people on the stage, but this is the audience and I like the picture. Use what you can use. That's what it comes down to sometimes. This is last time I was in Korea. He was just finished up music school, a very good violinist, and so I had a session with him. And I like this picture a lot. Just at the end of the workout, whatever. This is a shot of a body of water that runs through Seoul. That's really interesting. That used to be like a swamp a long time ago, but they took a long time and reclaimed it into something that people go to, like Central Park. This is one of the big churches in Seoul. That's from the earlier trip. And I just love the picture because it's getting a feeling of, you know, that kind of connection, the spiritual life, and the people that go there. I mean, it's really a lot of people go to that church, big church. This is a story I did on women divers in Korea. I spent 2 days photographing. It was really interesting. They dive without any help. I mean, it's just deep diving into to collect food, and they bring it up, and they're all like older people. Some are in the 90s. The youngest person was one person. She was 35 because her mother-in-law had gotten into it, so she got into it. But they were like, you know, 60s, 70s, amazing. In the 80s, you know, there's somebody at least in the 90s. This is after completing one of the days of, you know, going up there. This is this drink that was given to after her diving because it was cold and nippy. I had hoped actually to be able to get in the water with them as they were jumping into the water, but since there weren't any, I didn't realize how cold it was going to be. And I can't swim, but I thought I could hold onto the boat. Oh, good ideas? No, not at all. This is like getting on the boat on the way to the dropping off various the women into the water. So I call this my Godzilla picture. I mean, just not in how do you say in the insulting way. It's just that they have such a lust for life. It was really wonderful just to be hanging around with them. You know, really different kind of ball game. And this is like end of the day when they're gathered, they work together, and it's pretty serious. I mean, I think a lot of guys couldn't do this, you know, even if they could swim. I can't swim, so that's a whole nother story, you know. But it was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting. I'm going to read something from my book that I covered a lot of things that are going on in the civil rights movement and Black folk, you know. So it says, I believe the world is a complicated place. Once, when on assignment with Paul Thoreau in Africa, we had a long conversation about family. During the discussion, Paul said, you realize that your father, who was born in the year 1900, was too young for World War I, too old for World War II, and yet went through some of the toughest times a Black man could go through in the United States at the time. Paul's comment connected me with my father in a way that had not happened before. It propelled me to a new understanding of my father's life. It's an old story. The young think that they have figured out, and only to discover how little they actually know about their parents. It changes things in your life, and perhaps it is what keeps you awake at night when you should be sleeping. We hope for the beautiful dream deep within our private eternal souls. Observation is the nexus between the life of the human species and the collateral imagery left behind by the occasional photographer. My personal journey on this long road has been a meditation about what it means to be a human being. And I have tried to capture the complicated beauty and reality of life in a visual form. I started photographing early, and the insight continues to evolve. Not quite manageable, but dear to the heart, and a clean, clean-cut way. Life moves on and work continues. I realize that I have learned much, but at the same time, I watch the ticking clock in despair. I have learned from my father and mother and from my day-to-day life, and the lessons continue into the present. In my mind, there is a limited explanation for why we are here. The families of man, woman, and child are the reasons the dreams of the living are immortal. And I keep listening, hoping, and looking. I use my camera to freeze time and to make beautiful images that I hope will find their way into my dreams to inspire the continuing movement within the circle. I continue to search, and I live and breathe and wonder at the beauty of it all. I wrote this in Paris, France, on the way back from India, because just all the things that we do with music, with life, with art, with photography, with thought patterns. It's a continuing strange journey. And then covering, this is a funeral of George Floyd, and I wasn't feeling that good when I went up there either. But it's the kind of thing when you're covering things for a long time, you can't just stop. I mean, you try to be safe, particularly in these times, because this is the time of the pandemic. But I think somebody asked you among the other photographers, why did you do that? Why'd you do that? Because I knew that I had been ill. I said, well, if you had to die, that's not a bad reason to go, because it was important. It was very important. It's like you need to be able to deal with some of these things going on, and you can't walk away. You really can't walk away. It's important. It's this picture I made when I was still a little bit. There's been these episodes, but I'm fine now. I'm working out 3 times a week with personal trainer and some serious intense exercise, and it's great. Feels great. But this is like the occasions that happen. When I didn't want to. I said, "Oh, she should rest," and then the parade comes to you, and you end up photographing it anyway. I also like this picture because of the dog. Beware of dog. Okay, that dog was so friendly. This is like an election day in Houston, in the 3rd Ward, and this guy was like amazingly funny. I mean, it's just he's really a trip, and that's the thing. The beat of life is the beat of life. You cannot just ignore it and think, oh, I got to do something really, really super serious. Life is serious all the time. And when you're lucky, it's seriously good and funny and everything. So this is at a boxing gym, but it's not just a gym. It's for kids. So it's a community thing where kids together, and they're exercising and behaving themselves, and the people are behaving themselves. It's like really sort of interesting. And so that was a part of it. Not the last thing I photographed on election day, but it was I think a few beats before that, before I went to a place where they're having an after election night party, which was also interesting. That's the thing. You have to follow your gut sometimes, and see where it takes you. There's so much, going on. I'm glad that I did this assignment for Vogue magazine and the New York Times. For the Vogue thing was like 1 or 2 days, like the day before and the election day, maybe the day after. And I shot for that purpose was 2 days because I was working for the New York Times doing the story. And this is like the first picture series I did for the New York Times doing the story. And this is like election day, you're covering in a historical way, because it is part of history, but also you're photographing the beat of life, which is the part of history that shows up at various times, different times. This is the day that when Joe Biden was declared the winner, and there are some people who disagreed with that, but like this one was not one of those people, and it gets interesting. This is on the inauguration day. I felt sorry for these are state troopers, because they're wearing all this gear at the state capitol building. I thought that horse running from the statue going to the trees is funny. And this is like last picture of a Trump supporter on that particular, not that day, but the day of the inauguration, not the inauguration, the day when it came in that President Biden was now President Biden. And I was driving my car and also shooting with my right hand, which is not a smart thing to do, but it worked out okay. It was very surrealistic. The whole experience, the last 4 years has been surrealistic. So anyway, I think that's the last picture. And now there's a film, there's pictures I've been taking that I feel strongly about, and it's in a multimedia thing, and it's the last thing we're going to see before we start answering questions. So, Brian, I guess you can roll it now. Is the sound on? Is the sound on?
Whenever I'm alone with you, you make me feel
Okay.
Thank you so much, Eli.
You're welcome.
I think we have time for a couple of questions, if that's okay with you.
Of course. Yes, sir. No problem.
So there's one question about you being the first Black photographer at Magnum, and what challenges did you face? And my personal question was about what did it change for you to become a Magnum member?
Well, I don't know how to put it. Like, I was like a free spirit flowing through the atmosphere. First of all, I was in Central America, and the work that got their attention was the work I did in Central America, and then I what I called it. I went to. I was in New York City. I was on the way to Neiman Fellowship year, and I stopped in my mentor's place. And there's somebody, Ruth Lester from ICP, who was known for encouraging young photographers. I was not young; I was in my 30s, mid 30s. But she asked if I would come to International Center of Photography. The only place I had a formal education was at ICP for 2 weekends, master's workshops with Gene Smith and one with Gene Smith and one with Bruce Davidson. Those are the only course I had, and I have feelings for ICP also, because of that experience. And so what happened is that we met, and she introduced me to Cornell Kappa, and we had a discussion. Said, "Well, you're going to the Harvard, and you're going to come. Things are going to come up and whatever." So there wasn't any things issued like, "Okay, Aaron, whatever." And I wasn't even thinking that, to tell you the truth, because I whatever trail I was going to go on, I was working for the San Francisco Examiner. I like working there, and I was doing projects I thought were important, which is really good, And on my way out of ICP, I run into John Giannini, who's from San Francisco, and he was friends with the bureau chief of Magnum editorial department, and so we hadn't seen each other for a while, and so we hugged, and we sat down on the bench there and caught up, right? So then I had a copy of the Tortured Land, which is about the project in Central America, which was like eight staff people. That happened because I wanted to go, and I was going to go on my vacation to see what was going on. I did not understand the killing, was like really crazy. And well, crazy, it's normal for human beings maybe, but still I was wondering. I wanted to see for myself. That's always the thing. So, and I talked to my boss. He's a good guy, and he said that they're not gonna put up the money for me to go to Central America, because they lost a photographer, and a reporter was wounded during Jonestown, and the San Francisco Examiner was small enough to realize, it's a tight place, like a family, and nobody was interested in, somebody risking your neck like that again, because and in Salvador, I knew that if you're Black, they think you're Cuban, so you can be target practice, which happened, but I got out of it, so fortunately. Anyway, so what happened is that I realized he's staying at the house of the bureau chief, who I'd met briefly once and practically ran away because I didn't know what to say to her. So I was so intimidated, and just to say hello. So anyway, I had a Tortured Land with me. I'd left with Cornell Kappa, and another one I had in my bag, and I gave it to Esther. I just wanted to get an opinion of somebody who tell me honestly what I could have done, what was good, what was bad. It wasn't enough to get, oh, these are great. That wasn't enough. I wanted to know what I could have done better, and so, he was staying there. And so he said, I asked him if she could maybe take a look, or if she had some time and get her bang off feeling. She was very tough. So by the time I got back because her place was close to Magnum up there, and I took a train down to my mentor's place, and we were sitting around talking, having coffee, and the phone rings, and it's from Philip Jones Griffin, president of Magnum. And he says, hello, this is Philip Jones Griffin. I'd like to seduce you into joining Magnum, which, I mean, that was totally, that really never occurred to me. I was not trying to, man, I didn't know how they chose people. I loved the work. They was inspired by the work that they did, and the people in there, but I had no clue. So I thought it was a joke at first. He asked if I could come to the office, and I said, well, I have some things I had to do. Is that right if I could come tomorrow? And because I was waiting for somebody to drop the other shoe saying, yeah, I got you, and no, it's for real. And I went there, and it was nice because people greeted me like I was already a member. And it's a thing you go through, you become a nominee if you're taken in, then there's associate a couple years after that. And then, finally to get to full membership, it's a long voyage. And so I like San Francisco, frankly. It took me 6 months after being here for 6 months to realize this is a nice place to live, and I was doing work that I wanted to do. And I mean, the reason why I did this thing with the 8 people is because I was going to go on my vacation anyway. I just said, well, I'll just go, because I asked if I get Spanish lessons since I don't speak, Spanish, and I wanted to see. And so, that's what happened. And the paper did a great job. It was informative of the history and photographs in there. And the other photographer was there the 3 weeks because he had his wine crop coming in. That's only in San Francisco that happened. But I was there for 2 months, and then a third month, trying, working, and it was dangerous. But I think I didn't. It wasn't I didn't care. It's just that people day to day, even in the towns and cities, go through difficult things, and so I'm by myself. I'm not married, and it's like I had something I had to do. So that's why I was going to go and do it myself. But Eric Moskowska's with Boss, it was hard for him because he lost that young photographer before. I didn't realize, all that, the connection, because I was still, I mean, I got there 1980 to 83 when I went to Beirut, after I'd been taking Magnum, and I still hadn't left. It was just something I had to do. And he understood that, I mean, it's like a family. Once you go in there, it's like a family. It's just really good photographers, really good people. And the paper doesn't exist anymore because they got bought out. I mean, whatever, journalism world. But that's like a lot of times if you get the urge to go do something, I figure out how comfortable do you feel with the idea that you might not come back, And the only other thing you think about, try to be careful. And, you've had good luck in doing things that were important to you, And so also I've tried to be a reasonable person no matter what is going on. And that seems to have helped out a lot. Some places there's some interruptions with that, but the world is a big place. It's an amazing place. And you wonder how we're going to looking at things that are going on. I don't look at just the present. I'm looking at the possible futures. And that's so.
And, well, I have maybe that would be the last question. I think people want to ask what kind of advice you would have for a young photographer. And on a larger scale, I had a question about what you think about the profession today, about photojournalism as a practice today.
Well, when I first started, it was difficult getting jobs, also because I'm African American, right? But nothing much has really changed. It's just now everybody's going through the same thing, And like I think I went to the state capitol for the the day when the inauguration is going on, and there's hardly anybody there. I mean, the journalists are there, but there's hardly any people there because some people thought it was going to be a riot or something because of the statements that were made by the people that, what happened on January 6th, So, but I noticed a lot of my former students were there, and they're doing really well. They're working for Washington Post or New York Times and for other different publications. And the thing is that if you have an idea, each of these students had a belief or interest in something. And that's what you had to figure out, what are you interested in? And then be serious about it. Learn, it's not just taking pictures, it's reading. You can take 300 photographs that mean nothing if you're not careful. You should be at least believe in something more than just what is on the surface. There's human beings going in. I mean, my book was about what it means to be a human being. And if you're a journalist or a writer, and I'm doing a lot more writing now, and was a few things of, a film script, and it's based on things I know, but it comes into what happens to the human being. Like the short that you saw was about that. Somebody has doubts and they've gone through some stuff that they don't like, and now they're trying to get comfortable or something, deal with that. That's the fascinating thing. There's been people who are really terrible, and yet in some place inside there was something that was itching to get out that was good. And so you have to take that in consideration. But if you really want to do something, you have to learn the craft enough that you can get away with doing the work, get in here and do a lot of listening. I don't do hell of a lot of talking when I'm working. I'm listening all the time. I'm listening to the way the wind blows. And there's certain instances where I was in some place that was dangerous, and was going with I don't like going with groups so much, but that's what happened. And this person's singing in the back seats because he's terrified, And I think I told him to shut up, please, because I want a way to hear the way the wind blows, because it could matter or something. There's been so many crazy things that you come in contact with, but there's also these wonderful, beautiful things, and those are the things I remember as well as, and maybe more than the things that were incredibly dangerous. So I don't know. I mean, it's like, do you really want to do this? Are you doing it because you want to be famous? Screw that. Leave that alone, because all that will do is you'll find yourself in some situation and you said, why am I here? And if you get to that point, then you made the wrong decision. It's tricky. It's tricky because everybody has reasons to go some places, but that's not the whole world. The economy, you can learn a lot from being aware of the economy, because that steers a lot of things. All wars are about economy, really, about why I want this for my whatever. So that's what makes it so interesting, because you find so many interesting people, great people that you never expect. So I expect everything and I expect nothing at the same time. If it sounds like a Zen kind of thing, it's the true kind of thing. That's
Well,
what it is.
thank you so much, Eli. I think those are wise words to go by. Thank you so very much for tonight, Eli.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Take care. Take care.